Recording in progress.
What's the address?
Sliding into your phone.
Thank you. Last one. Next meeting will be at 10:30. I'm teasing. I would, make some light. Hey, nice to meet you. We just got that. No, in fact, I did. I heard it the day before the hunt. So I had to watch the kids. It's not a big phone. It's not scaffold phone. It's no difficulties. It's slow behind. I don't know. I've actually seen the break. I just saw an emergency with the dog. So this style was today. Hey, man. Good. I was just telling him I busted my wrist in a fight. People in the gas. Yes, it's my writing. All right. Maybe we won't have as many changes. You definitely won't. You definitely won't. This would have been my secretary's dream.
Of course, he still got his eyesight and can adjust it to this. And she put it there. So.
I'll just think what if Big Van fell off his bike?
Yeah.
How would we ever get past the minutes?
I'll tell you what, I'll just say this for everybody involved. You know, I've always worn a bike helmet when we sit there at these bikes, but never really realized how cool they were. But don't ride with that bike. My head bounced off this thing. I mean, I really would have put myself down. Part of me forced to just tell you what it was.
Yeah. That's it. No more bicycles. Well,
Thanks, Scott. You got one? Okay, well, it's 10:30. I meant, did you have? Yes.
okay, that issue's up. I'll go ahead and take that. It's a little-
Okay, well, let's come to order. Let's remember, I'm the worst about this, about leaning into the microphones. Is this on now? Okay, great. Thank you. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda that was circulated to y'all? Move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mason seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We are continuing and hopefully finalizing the language on septic that we dealt with last time. Scott has done a great job of putting everything together. I hope y'all have had a chance to review it. I might just have one or two minor things.
Sure, and I'll just give everyone a quick reminder
Yeah, we
with
need
the
to approve the
microphones,
minutes
they're
first, too.
adjustable to your height. And
Minutes.
if you want to stay within about 2 to 3 inches of it when you're speaking, luckily we've all got masks on, so you could just be right up on it if you want.
Okay, is that better? I'm the worst at that.
No worries, just try to
Thank you.
give everybody right at the microphone.
I forgot, Dan reminded me, we skipped over the minutes. Let's get a motion on the floor. Is there a motion to approve the amendments as Angie revised them, which y'all all have a copy before you? Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? And Dan, you suggested these changes. Would you like to just run over them real quick?
Well, I could go in detail, but as I said in my email to Angie, the minutes she had substantively, I think were exactly right. She did a great job of capturing all that discussion and distilling it down into the correct form. But I got a little confused between section 3 and subsection 3 and so forth as we're going through the document. So I just clarified, added where it might have been a section 3, I might have changed one to subsection 3, and I put the title and the page number just for clarification to know exactly what we were changing. So it was all substantively, I think it was probably exactly right. It was just I clarified it. I kind of broke it into some sub paragraphs instead of one big long paragraph. So it's more of a clarification than anything else.
And that's what Angie has circulated to us.
That's correct.
And with that in mind, are y'all ready to vote on the? Okay, not seeing any objection. All in favor of approving the revised minutes, say aye. All opposed? Thank you. Okay. Scott, you want to lead us through this?
Sure.
I'm looking at what you sent out, which was all. Great.
Yeah, so if it's okay with you all, we'll just walk through page through page. And I'm just going to make a note of the changes that I have redlined, strike through, and green underlined as proposed language. If at any point I or we have missed or overlooked anything, just let me know. So just a quick note. Yeah, first page, I'm just noting, the way that I did the strike throughs was red strike through, green underline.
Yep.
Going on to page 2.
Y'all stop, Scott, if you have a question or a comment.
Right. So the throughout this document, as we have gone through the town's different ordinances, zoning and general ordinances, the term of art that we're trying to use to cover both septic systems and sewer systems is wastewater. So that's a term that we are trying to consistently place through the ordinance, as it is relatively content neutral in terms of either being sewer or septic. It's just a descriptive overall term. So on the section 603 for safe on-site waste disposal, that has been stricken through and replaced with a wastewater system.
And on that paragraph where it's in no case shall the lot be smaller than required area, there is an exception for existing platted lots somewhere, right?
Yes, that's so it could either be clarified here, essentially lot of record is that's the term that's legally recognized by both by the town and the county. So it could either be inserted here, or if there needs to be a cross reference to see lots of record.
Maybe it should be inserted so that somebody doesn't look at that, and because most of those lots wouldn't meet it.
What's the suggested language?
Let's see,
You're talking about the first sentence in 603,
the last sentence.
last sentence. But in no case shall the lot be smaller than the required area for the zoning district, which is located.
Accepting lots of record.
Right.
Okay.
And something that I believe in looking at this previously, something that would be, it depends if you're wanting to say, if the heading needs to remain just minimum lot area, or if you want to make it abundantly clear that it is minimum lot area for newly created lots. Because basically, once you've got a lot of record, that is such.
That's a good suggestion. Why don't we say minimum lot area for new lots of record and just add a sentence at the end? I think we could put at the end with the exception of lots of record.
I guess that's fine, but is the second sentence, and I'm just asking this as a question. If it says in the first sentence, the minimum lot area shall be as specified in Article 5 for each zoning district, that's referring to lots of record, right? Those are platted lots. No, just
So the minimum lot area that's specified in Article 5, which is the standards for the zoning districts, that is for newly created lots. A lot of record is exactly that. You can develop, if you have a lot of record that's smaller than the minimum lot size specified in Article V, you can still develop it pending all other setbacks, height, et cetera, et cetera.
all right. Second.
Let me comment on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we then say after the minimum lot area, the first sentence for newly created lots, put it in the body of it also?
I think, that would be building on clarity, yes.
Okay, so are y'all in agreement with
I
that?
think
My
that's-
question is, before we leave that point.
Okay.
The minimum lot areas that are specified in Article 5. I know we already have exceptions for existing lots that can be developed even though they may not meet the minimum lot standards. That's somewhere already in there. Is that not encompassed in Article 5 already? So we don't need to restate it here?
I would have to consult that. I don't have that in front of me.
You follow me? If
Yeah,
we've
but
already
it's clear-
created
it's
exception
clear.
and if we've already created exception in the zoning district section, do we need to state the exception again here if we've already stated it elsewhere?
Scott said it's supplemental clarity. That
Yeah, I think it's just more
doesn't
clarity.
cost
Well,
anything.
as long as we clarify it, don't create a potential contradiction or conflict in where it's worded one place and worded in another place here. It's not the exact same language. We could be creating confusion rather than clarifying. That's my
Well,
question.
I'm looking at the table in section 5. It does say minimum lot area. 1.4 for R1. So 2.4 for R2. 3.4 for.
Where do we create the exception for existing lots? I guess I didn't think about leaving all that up before we got.
So I would have, again, I apologize. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I believe, and I would have to check this, a lot of record is defined in the ordinance. So part of the issue is that, this is stating minimum lot area. It's not clarifying here that this is for newly created lots. That's a key point of differentiation, is that a lot of record is just that, whether it's 300 square feet or 300,000 square feet, it's a lot of record. If you've got a newly created lot, that is when the minimum lot size requirement of whatever zoning district it is in is applicable.
In the minimum lot area, that's set forth in Article 5. And if a lot's grandfathered in, because if it's a lot of record when the zoning ordinance was adopted, it is. I mean, that's covered in,
Right.
I don't see the, I guess I'm going where Dan is. I don't see the distinction. The necessary for the distinction. The lot areas for lots, whether they're record or not,
Right.
are set forth in Article 5. If they're not applicable to a lot because it was in existence prior to the 1983 or whatever it was, that's fine. Am I thinking wrong?
Well, you guys are lawyers and y'all can think that through. But I think as Susan and Alex and Scott have all said, we're trying to make it easy for other people. So I come down for the clarity, if we even just named the title, minimum lot area for
Newly created lots.
Well, let me get to Bill to my second
Okay.
concern, and that's the second sentence.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure this was intended, by my reading of it, to be applicable only to newly created lots. It says an area is not covered by a public or community sewer system. The minimum lot area shall be determined by the Buncombe County Health Department. This minimum lot area shall be that necessary for a safe on-site wastewater system. That seems to me to be applying more generally to all lots that do not have a public water system. So maybe we need to take this sentence out and put it somewhere else. But I mean, somewhere in here, certainly I know it's in this committee's intention that in allowing septic systems, it's only on the condition that it meet all of the various Buncombe County requirements, and I assume that includes minimum lot size.
So interestingly, the county does not, again, this is a bit of a nuance between lots of record and newly created lots. For lots of record, the county has no minimum or maximum lot size. It's purely performance driven. So if you have a site that has the right mix of topography and soil composition as to where a septic system can properly percolate, that's what, when people always say, does it perk? That's short for percolate. If the county environmental health division determines that site meets their performance standards for the septic system, and typically septic systems are not, a small little thing you can tuck in the corner of this room. So certainly lot size is a consideration, and also the requirement of having a secondary repair area next to the current septic.
But Scott, you sent us a copy of Chapter 78 of the Buncombe County Code of Ordinances.
Right.
The Table 2 attached there makes it very clear that in the RLD category, there's a minimum lot size of 43,560, but importantly, in the R1 and R2 zoning categories, and I assume R3 too, where there's no public sewer, there's a 30,000 square foot minimum lot size
Right. For newly created lots.
for newly created lots.
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, I think we need to consider, I'm not suggesting an amendment at this stage, but I think our committee's deliberations have intended to have Buncombe County septic requirements apply to all lots that use septic systems if we allow them. So I raise that for the committee's consideration.
Sure. And I think it might be something as simple in terms of just clarifying the language. Honestly, I mean, it's, minimum, maximum lot size. I mean, you could simply strike in that second sentence, the minimum, you could say the lot area shall be determined by the Buncombe County Health Department.
Or is it
And then-
the
then you'd have
minimum
to-
lot
you'd
area
have-
for consideration of septic service? Is that what we're talking about?
You'd have to strike minimum from the next line as well, then I guess.
Right.
Well, I want to stick with this because I'm not coming back to do this a third time. So let's agree. on
My
it.
only question, Mr. Chairman, was that it seems to me that the lot areas, minimum lot areas are covered in great detail in other sections of the ordinance. And they contain the exceptions for grandfather lots and so forth and so on. And it seems to me that this 603 was just stating the minimum lot area, and it throws it back to that Article 5 where all those, I haven't looked at it in the last week or two, so I can't remember exactly what all that says, but it seems that minimum lot area is discussed in those other sections. And this 603 was just referencing those and said minimum lot area shall be as described in that Article 5. And now we're trying to bring some of those terms into this section 603. And I'm saying, it seems to me it's usually safer to leave the weeds and the details and the nuts and bolts in the section dealing with minimum lot size and not try to describe them again here, where we're just incorporating by reference those. But now we're trying to put some parts of it here. And I'm just worried that we might create a little bit of confusion while we're attempting to create clarity.
From a simplification standpoint, if you were striking this section 603 entirely, the point of reference for a minimum lot area would be, that is in each individual zoning district. So that's one possible option. And of course, I believe, let's see,
But of course, here we're trying to deal with the septic situation.
right. And I believe, let's see, let me just glance to. Well, yeah, I mean, so the section 503 going back up top there, the R3 residential district, that does not have specific reference to Buncombe County standards, but that is the district in question that we're discussing, correct?
Can I make a suggestion? If we leave the title like it is
Mhm.
and leave the first sentence like it is, as Dan suggests. And then in the third sentence, in areas not served by public community sewer system, the lot area for determination of sewer or sanitary or septic service, septic service shall be determined by the Buncombe County Health Department. It's really two different things. Yeah. It's really for the septic, it's for the type of service. So does that clarify?
So I'm just going to read through what I think I just heard. So the minimum lot area shall be specified in Article V for each zoning district. An area is not served by a public or community
Sewer system.
wastewater system. The lot area shall be determined by the Buncombe County Health Department, so striking the minimum.
No. An area is not served by a public.
Public or community wastewater systems.
Public community. It's sewer system, isn't it? Wastewater system. The lot area for determination of septic tank.
Next sentence deals with that, Bill, I think.
There is not served by the sewer system. The lot area shall be as determined. You don't have to say minimum.
Okay, shall be as determined. Okay.
Shall be determined by the Buncombe County Health Department.
Shall be
Simple.
as determined.
Why are you throwing in as
Shall be as determined.
determined? Okay,
Period. And then the next sentence, the minimum lot area shall be that. Safe on-site wastewater. Or a safe on-site wastewater system. In no case shall the lot be smaller than the required.
I think that's,
Okay. Y'all think it works?
it's
Okay,
good for
Scott, are
me.
you okay
I'm
with that?
okay with it.
We're basically just changing that second sentence.
okay.
Just two words we're changing, correct? Deleting minimum, changing sewer to wastewater and adding as.
Yeah, in addition to changes to scope.
All right, can we, are we in agreement on that?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, the only thing I was gonna say is still to go back to the original question about whether we want to list this as or new.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry, that was, we've covered all that, but it doesn't specify for new or existing, which I think was part of the original discussion on this one.
But we decided that's in order.
Okay, so just leave it as that. Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, by common consent, then let's continue on. Else on page 2. Anything else on page 2? Okay, page 3.
There, in section, there's this third paragraph, chapter D, twice, streets and public walkways. The caption is water and sewer, and I think that sewer should be wastewater.
Good catch.
And then the fourth line, that same paragraph, the right end where the sentence begins at the right end, it says the main wastewater sewage collector lines. Do we need sewerage in wastewater replacing sewerage?
So the sewerage that's specific to MSD, which is, the sewerage lines are those are the
Okay,
pipelines.
okay,
So
fine.
it's,
I had a question mark. I just asked the question.
yeah, no worries.
So-
It's specific to MSD, and then wastewater septic areas is specific to Buncombe County Health Department.
And again, a question.
Well, let me ask a
Okay,
question.
sorry.
Do we need wastewater if we're leaving sewage in?
No, actually,
Okay, so that'll be the main sewage connector line.
Delete wastewater. Yeah. Okay, then on that same sentence there, you got now the main sewage collector lines must meet the MSD regulations. It looks like we've got a period and a semicolon. And then I think it should be, according to the minutes, it should be a period and then a new sentence beginning capital wastewater septic areas must be. You follow
Okay.
me?
Yep.
We've got a period and a semicolon. I think the
Right.
semicolon should be deleted and the W in wastewater should be
there are
capitalized.
two separate statements.
Yes, two separate sentences.
Anything else?
That's all I have on that.
Okay, by common consent, everybody? Yes. Thank you. Going further along, chapter E.
Quick clarification, were we also striking wastewater from wastewater septic areas? Just in that last sentence regarding Buncombe County Health.
Oh, yes. So that would be waste
Well,
It'll just sim-
isn't there a distinction between septic and sewerage?
I think that's
Sewerage is
fine the way it
MSD and
is.
septic is private.
Just wastewater septic.
That's the way I've distinguished them, Scott, is septic is private and sewerage would be MSD, public.
Right. I guess the question was just for trying, you can either strike the term wastewater or you can leave it in both, just to be abundantly clear that they're both serving the same purpose via different systems.
Are you talking about maybe the wastewater sewerage, leave that?
No, he's saying just delete, what
No,
Mason
that's
said, can we delete wastewater at the beginning of that last sentence?
right. And
Okay.
my only argument for leaving it in front of wastewater sewage collector and wastewater septic is that it's abundantly clear that those two,
Yeah, I kind of like both of them in personally,
That's-
but
right,
What you're
it's just
suggesting
building,
is to-
That's fine.
it's just
Okay.
building clarity.
okay.
Okay.
So leave the.
Those
main
wastewater remains.
sewage. Leave them both in, okay.
Okay. Moving on, next is chapter E. And I think you want to say wastewater instead of sewer in the title. Instead of sewer.
Water and wastewater, yep.
Okay, then continuing on, any questions?
Section 5, same catch bill, caption, water and sewer required,
Okay.
water and wastewater required.
I'm sorry, where are we?
Section 5 at the bottom.
The bottom, yep.
And that's up in, let's see, up in section 2,
Think of wastewater systems.
water and wastewater systems.
One other in the, that section 5 at the very bottom again, where we're referring to that as permitted by NCGS 8797.2, I think as suggested by the town's attorney, should add right after that as amended from time to time, or
That's
as
my
may be
understanding.
amended or whatever. And
I
I think,
had
Bill,
as
you had
amended from
suggested
time
that
to
as well.
time. Susan had suggested that.
So that statute as amended from time to
As
time.
amended from time to time.
The comma as amended. from time. Going back up to number 2, section 2, right above that, Metropolitan Sewage District to regulate waste disposal.
To regulate, let's say, metropolitan sewerage, you're talking about section 2, the, I
Right
guess
above that.
the,
Maybe that's correct, because they're doing.
That's-
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
they're-
probably fine like it is. Okay. Great. Okay, anything else on page 3? Page 4.
I just had a question under section 6. Did we want to leave in that section, subsection 1? I couldn't remember if we deleted that or not.
the no preview of any kind.
Yes,
Yeah, I thought we left that in.
I sort of thought we did too, but I just wanted,
It makes
Right,
it clear.
question.
Okay, we can, so that it'll simply read section 6, privies and septic tanks regulated. No preview of any kind shall be permitted in the
that'd be
town.
number 1, and then your green one down at the bottom would be number 2.
Okay.
Subsection 2.
Okay, moving on down. In section 8, I had a note, remember, paragraph 2. I think as I reflect on it, that's correct with sewer rates instead of sewer rates and connection charges. So, because that's their system. That's their system.
Mhm.
Anything else on page 4?
Just after in that whole section 6 at the end, which says all regulations and orders, I like that it's regulations and all requirements.
Regulations and, okay,
Okay, anything else on page 4? Page 5. Page 6.
I hesitate to bring this up. At the very top where we deleted that whole big paragraph, the very last sentence that's deleted, it's not in yellow. Says when public water or sewer lines are extended in accordance with blah, 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 blah. Property owners who have private wells and septic systems will be required to connect. I know we discussed that at some length. I don't think we came to any resolution. I just want to say, I personally have no opposition to leaving that in with some clarification on that exception in the statute as far as private water, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't have a strong feeling either way.
I just pointed, as I pointed out last week, it's fairly typical for municipalities, counties in Florida anyway, to have provisions like this when they go to they can't.
Sorry, could you lean into the microphone a little closer?
Sure.
please?
I mean, the fact is, when you're making a utility expand, and it goes back to financing. When you're making a utility expansion as a local government, you've got to do it on a rate base that you guarantee to whoever's making the loan. And if you can't require your people to connect, you can't guarantee your rate base to the lender. I mean, it's the way the world works. Now, I know it sounds harsh to say, well, the government can make you use water, but it's to the overall public good to have public water systems, folks. It's what put us into the, it's the way, the preferred way of providing utilities. And what this simply does is what provisions like this do is they make the financing of these systems possible when they otherwise wouldn't be possible because you wouldn't have a rate base. Now, typically the cities and towns are larger, but I think even in some small extensions for 40 or 50 lots, if the people want them, the city goes in to get financing, the town goes in to get financing, they're going to have to guarantee the rate base to include whatever incremental portion of the rate is going to be required to retire the debt. That's the reason for it. I would suggest leaving it in because I do think it's beneficial. I don't think it's a penalty for someone to be able to use city water. I just don't.
I think I was the one that objected to it last time, but you convinced me, and I think Alex had said it would be helpful to do that also. So
Well,
I'm persuaded by it.
the one additional thought on that, if I remember correctly, there, North Carolina statute, and Susan can correct me if I'm wrong here, gives the town an option. You can require them to connect, and this kind of addresses what Mason's talking about, or they will start being billed whether they connect or not. So at least once the services are available, they will have the rate structure. The income will start coming in, whether people connect or not is their choice, unless the health department requires them because the septic tank's not working, whatever, when you're talking sewer side. That's an option they can throw in there rather than require them. You can say you'll be required to connect, but in any event, you'll be charged the rate for the service that's available.
In support of requiring it, we've got an area that we're specifically talking about 20 some lots. And if those 20 some lots start putting in 20 wells, when the town municipal system is relying on the 3 wells in the same area, we're shooting each other in the leg or in the heart even. So we should, and this goes against my financial interest perhaps, if I put a well in so that I can build up there, and then I have to connect to water, that's still better off for everybody.
But keep in mind that statute 87-97.2 would give you the option to keep your private well and you would not have to connect to the city water. But I'm saying the town could still charge you the city water service fee, minimal fee each month, whether you use it or not. Because you have the option under that statute to opt out of using the city's water. Is that not correct? That 87-97.2 gives a couple of examples where you do not have to connect, which we discussed last week. And we've got exceptions in other places. So if we do put the sentence back in, we'll have to add, unless the private well is permitted by 87-97.2.
Susan, did you want?
If we're going to keep the sentence, you're right, we do need to add the exception for those situations covered by 87-97.2. as far as whether you can bill people when if they have a well, but they're within a system that's served, I'm not sure about that. I did not find anything when I was looking, and it might be a question for the local government commission. They advise on a lot of government finance questions. So that may be the best source for the answer to that question.
Okay, I seem to recall, I'll look it up, and if I find it, I'll send it to everyone. But I thought I recall there's a statute somewhere that specifically spells out that option, but I could be mistaken.
There may be, I don't remember seeing it when I was looking at this. I may have just forgotten about it.
So where are we ending up here? Do we want to say except as otherwise permitted by section?
Yep, I think that's
Whatever
all
that
we're saying.
section
I
is.
think that's all we're saying for right now. That when it gets to the town, they may want to discuss the option, if that's available to require.
So clarifying, section 3 is now being kept in its entirety with
no.
the
No,
addition.
just the last sentence.
Okay,
But we're adding, except as otherwise provided by chapter, whatever that is.
87-97.2.
As amended from time to time.
Correct.
Susan, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Right. Alex? Okay, from a municipal, okay, great. Okay, moving on. Are we through with that? So there's no heading there. That's just becomes the last sentence of 2. Got that, Scott?
I'm sorry. one moment. I'm sorry, catch me up. Where are we?
There's no separate numbering for that sentence. That sentence becomes the last sentence.
Which page is this?
That's the
Sorry.
one we're talking about. 6.
Well, wouldn't it be section 3, private wells and septic systems?
It's chapter 5. So that's the scope. If you want to put that, let's see.
I'm sorry, which?
I don't think you need that, man. This chapter applies, except extension which is the public utilities shall be made in accordance with the requirements of subdivision rates and street standards. When public water sewer lines are extended.
I guess.
Okay, that'll be the last.
But it
sentence.
is dealing with this, specifically dealing with the private wells and septic systems. It's saying when it is extended, those who have private wells and septic systems will be required to connect.
Well, then if you made the title of it, conversion of private wells and septic systems, and made that 3, that's really what it's about. Yeah. Okay. So make that 3 and call it conversion of private wells and septic systems. And then that one sentence. It's great to have 3 lawyers. Scott, you want to read it back to us? when you-
Sure. So clarifying, this is on page 6, section 3, which was formerly headed private wells and septic systems will now be called conversion of private wells and septic systems. Conversion of private wells and septic systems. When public water or sewer lines are extended in accordance with the ordinance or MSD requirements, property owners who have built private wells and septic systems will be required to connect to the public water system and sanitary sewer system, except as otherwise provided by 87-97.2 as amended from time to time.
Okay, anything else on page 6? Page 7.
So this, the note that I have on here, this was just a comment from Mason. So the highlighted portion under section 3, dedication of utility line and easement. I had previously accidentally left that out. Well, basically it was a copy paste error. So that's just elaborating that it's the content that is there.
That's the part that inserted at 4.
Yes, so this was really just a clarification of the content that is there, but in terms of any substantive changes, I don't believe
I didn't see any substance.
there would be any.
We're happy with that.
It all makes sense.
Anything else on page 7?
That was a paragraph somewhere I've seen in earlier documents that where the property owners request an extension, that the town may put in the extension and assess those property owners accordingly. And then the question came up, can that be done in ETJ? Since the town controls the zoning, can they, if the property owners request it, extend the utility line where the property owners are assessed the cost of putting it in? And that's important because I've worked on this for a lot of years. That seems to be the only way we could actually get sewer extended in DTJ.
I don't think, Wade, that there's any limitations. It's just the town limits in section 2. I'm going back and looking at it quickly in part 1. It just talks about any person designed to connect or to extend approval and now can enter into an agreement. It's dedicated and the costs get allocated. I think all that's covered. Not limited to the
Open. Alex expressed some concern that it might not be.
Okay. Where would that be?
So one of the statutes that I looked at was 168-216. The heading of that statute is authority to make special assessments, and it says that a municipality is authorized to make special assessments against benefited property within its corporate limits. So that's the special assessment process. The ordinance also, there's another option in the existing chapter M, which would be by agreement of the property owners. The special assessment is that statutory procedure that would not be available outside of the town limits. But there is another option in chapter M
In the statutes,
in our ordinance.
in the ordinance, general ordinance. So are you saying that they can do it then to answer Wade's question?
We cannot
agreement.
use the statutory procedure,
Right.
but we could get to a similar place, not the same place, but a similar place with an agreement as set out in chapter M.
So just making my own slow mind. The agreement that is mentioned at the bottom of page 7. They can agree with the property owners. Is that where you're saying this is covered?
Yes, it's on page 7.
So Wade, I think you're protected. Hope so. Okay, moving on. Anything else in 7? 8.
It's in section 6, it's very minor, but the way Scott's got the change, it's not exactly like it's worded in the minutes. In the 6th line, well, going back to the 5th line, we're starting at the comment says, the board shall consider and act upon the approval or disapproval of any, that's correct, application. We need to insert after application for extension.
Which section is that?
Section 6 on page 9. So it'd say, read that line 6 would, it starts with the word disapproval, would be disapproval of any application for extension. And I think it should, any should not be changed to the right there. The word the should remain. It should.
Okay.
And the action of the board shall be final. And then continuing on, provided however the board may indicate that change of the word "the" to "any" again should not have be made. It should stay "the."
Okay.
By the proposed extension, the requirements must be met. So the only thing it changes is that first "the" should be changed to "any" application for extension, and then everything else will stay as it was. Don't make those two changes.
Okay.
"Any" to "the."
And with regard to the term, action by the board shall be final. Is there a time period that it's final? In other words, they denied it because of something, and the property owners were able to satisfy the something. Do they have to wait a year before they ask for it again, or is it, in other words, final means final?
Well, presumably, the property owners would ask the town not to make a final approval until they could see if they could make it. So there wouldn't be a final.
Well, it's got that proviso. It's after the word "final." It says, provided, however, the board may indicate that owners of the property benefited by the proposed extension, the requirements which must be met as a prerequisite of approving. So I assume that's sort of addresses what you're talking about. If you had some technical problem, whatever, they could point it out at that time. That's the way I read that. Provided, however, does that answer your question a little bit?
I hope so.
Well, I mean, it doesn't say shall be final period, at least. You've got something hanging out there after the semicolon and provided, however.
I think what final here is, it's a final decision on the appeal of the determination of the director of public works or the county commissioner vote. So that'll be a final decision on the appeal, but it doesn't mean another application decision can be made, and then different decisions later under different circumstances.
Sorry to interrupt one more time. If you could just remember to lean in.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're back here, which is, this is all actions have been taken by the Director of Public Works and by the PNC if required. And the recommendations have been made. The board then will consider that
Approval or disapproval. Then the provided however the board may indicate the owners of the property benefited by the proposed extension. That doesn't read right. Provided, however, the board may indicate to the owners of the property benefited by the proposed extension. That's,
And any would probably be okay to make that change.
yeah, any, that should be. in
That
there.
probably should be any, I see.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
that's okay.
Now,
So,
The last one should be any.
okay.
okay. Are we now happy with that?
indicates probably not the best word. Specify. Requirements.
May advise or specify, I like specify.
Specifies more specific
Yeah,
than
I like-
indicate.
I like that.
Okay, anything else? On page 9. Anything on page 10? Anything on page 11? Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. I think that's it, isn't it? Are y'all ready to vote on it, to send it on to the council with these changes? And the council will not be able to act on it tonight, so we'll get a chance to reread it. to make sure that the changes were made properly. But Alex has agreed that he will advise the council on our behalf so that Dan doesn't have to go to the meeting. That we have recommended changes and that will be forthcoming to them.
Commissioner Shy, could I ask one question?
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that we talked about last meeting was, if we go back to page 3 at the bottom of the page, section 5, water and sewer required, where it says owners of improved property. I think Scott looked for definitions. I looked for definitions. I didn't find a definition of improved property in the ordinance or in the statute. And so do we want to address that? Do we want to add a definition for purposes of chapter E, for purposes of this section? What do we mean by improved property? Because if you look at Scott with the information that Scott has provided, it could mean that there's a building on the property. It could also mean that it's, it's got services, water and sewer services adjacent or that they can connect to. I don't know if that's something the commission wants to consider, but just bring that to your attention.
Thank you. Do we need the word improved?
Well,
It's really
if
when
it's
they
not,
want to make improvements.
well, if you just remove the word improved, it's saying all owners of property, so therefore an unimproved property says shall connect with the public water system, but not anything to connect if it doesn't have a house on it.
You could just put all property owners. And that way you would have-
But you still wouldn't,
No, that.
Not-
Still would apply to make-
I mean, I think common definition of improved is it has a house on it, but,
You have a nice definition of building in the zoning ordinance that might be appropriate to incorporate here. It's not in this ordinance, but it's in the zoning ordinance.
What is that? It would seem to me all property improved for habitation or occupation.
containing a building.
What if it doesn't contain a building that you proposed to put a building?
Well, you still wouldn't be required to connect until the building's there, right?
Well, it's built into the overall approval process. You can't build the building.
Okay, so where are we ending up with that? I was just looking in the zoning ordinance to see if improved was defined, but I don't see it in the definitions.
I mean, isn't the common definition of improved property or it's building, property containing a building?
That's I'm pointing out there that at least, if you're specifically looking at, and this is just a very specific thing that I had noticed, looking at the county's tax parcel data, there is a field on there that notes improved Y or N, yes or no. And the pattern that I saw was essentially improved, building on the parcel, unimproved, no building on the parcel. This other definition that I've seen, in reference to, I guess, general real estate development is, a property is perceived to be quote unquote improved if it has services in immediate proximity to it. You could really go either way, but I think, for the purposes of this, a building is not going to be in existence there if there are no services. Well, I should say an inhabited building. If you've got a barn or something else like that, that's beside the point for services. To Alan's point, if you're maybe just taking out the term improved and just saying all owners of property or all property owners, I think that's stating the intent there of.
Well, but that would include vacant property. You don't want to require sewers for vacant property.
Right.
All improved property for rent, a property on which a building is located,
Is or will be located.
is or will be located.
Susan, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Scott, you want to read that?
So all owners of improved property
For in
says, all property on which a building is or will be located.
But again, you're still getting into the will part. I mean, I think it all comes down to for water intake purposes. I mean, that would also, the water intake purposes would begin once you decided to develop on the property. So that if it's just a property owner that's in the city limits, they would be required, should they decide to improve it or put any property there, that they would, that's the intent. I mean, I'm not trying to get too wrapped around this, but again, you know, to me, it's if you own property in the city and you're going to put water in for any purposes, it has to be through the city water system. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with Alan. I'm a little, have a little heartburn about the word will. I mean, you may have plans to develop it for 10 years from now, but does that mean you got to hook up to the water and sewer right now? If it's still a vacant lot,
What if you said, or for which improvements are planned?
again, you got the same issue. Plan for when?
Well, you gotta use some common sense at some point.
Maybe we say this, all owners of property within that town or ETJ shall provide wastewater systems required by, or blah, 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 as the case may be, in connection with the construction of any buildings thereon. Right? Because you don't want to be required to do it if you're not building something, right?
And that was sort of my point too, but again, I don't know that we necessarily need to talk to ETJ at this point because we sort of seem to exclude it at other places, but for the town, intent is, and it's sort of that first sentence, the point I was trying to make was where it says the public water system for water intake purposes. It's like, if you're not using water, you shouldn't have to hook to it until such a time as you need it. So, I mean, it's, I think we can simplify this is what I'm trying to say. Just,
What we're saying in the second sentence, now, it's talking about water. It's talking about wastewater only. And we were modified it to say that all owners of true property within the town or the ETJ shall provide wastewater systems as required either by the Metropolitan Sewage District or Buncombe County Health. So we're not taking out the ETJ and separating it from the town. We're keeping them separate. I mean, we're keeping them very possibly they're on equal ground. And all we're saying is that those requirements to provide wastewater systems click into place when they construct homes.
okay.
Does it help if we, for the water, does it help if we tie it to, for vacant property, if we tie it to the submittal of an application for a developmental permit? So that if you just someday, 10 years from now, plan to build a house, you're not covered. But once you submit an application for a permit or a certificate of zoning compliance, whatever, a developmental approval, then at that point is when it's required. Does that help?
Can we go back and let Scott read what he's got?
It's going to take a while. No, so all owners of property within the town limits or ETJ shall be required to provide wastewater systems as required by MSD and or the Buncombe County Health Department as the case may be. That's, if we're adding something on the end about at the time of construction or at the time of development permitting, I think that
Time development permitting.
at the time of development permitting, I think that is, that's a clear statement of when that applies.
Susan, okay with that? Everybody okay? Okay, would you read that one more time?
Sure, one second. Okay. All owners of, we are removing improved, correct? Just to simplify. All owners of property within the town limits or ETJ shall be required to provide wastewater systems as required by MST and or the Buncombe County Health Department, as the case may be at the time of development permits. Sure, sure. So all owners of property within the town limits or ETJ shall provide wastewater systems as required by MSD and or the Buncombe County Health Department, as the case may be at the time of development permitting.
Yeah. I put the classification of the-
Okay.
As the case may be.
Are we okay with that?
That addresses that.
First sentence says all owners approved property in the town limits shall connect to the public water. Except where a private water well. 797.
Yeah. We,
And you could add at the time of development permitting to that as well, just to be abundantly clear.
Yeah.
This is when you do this for water.
It'd be consistent. It should be consistent, but
So what if
separate
you get a
sentence.
permit that you never did?
You have a vested right within a certain period of time. But if you
Just says
never,
you have to put the- sure, and then
you
Well,
could,
but-
you could change it. I mean, Yeah.
I think-
permitting and construction, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's the aspect of you got the permit, you've got your vested right for X period of time. For whatever reason, you don't act on that, then that goes back to, vested rights and, periods of permit approval. So,
I withdraw my minutia.
okay. So just to clarify on that first section about water, we are adding that same language on the end at the time of development permitting. Okay,
And I guess the only difference would be in the water part, you have to have that exception about the two sentences are very similar, one addressing this septic and sewer, one addressing water. The language used in the water one, you got to be sure to include that exception for that statute 87-97(2).
yes,
I think you
certainly.
read that. Yeah, you
Okay.
read that. Would you read it again?
Sure. All owners of property within the town limits shall connect with the public water system for water intake purposes, except where a private potable water well is permitted per NTGS 8797.2 at the time of development permitting.
As amended.
As amended from time to
As
time.
at time to time. Yes, I do have that there.
Okay. are we-
Maybe we should put that wordsmithing again here, but at the time of permitting, to put it right after the shall,
I agree
shall,
with you.
comma, at the time of permitting. For the development permitting, connect, blah, 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 instead of tacking on the very end of the sentence.
And what practically happens is you've done your permits and you're actually requesting water right away because you've got a mixed mortar.
Right.
And so you're only billed once the meter's set. And the meter's going to be set when the property owner needed to be set to develop it. And then the sewer or wastewater connection happens in connection with the certificate of completion. Compliance.
Scott, did you understand what I was saying about at the time of development permitting, put that right after the word shall,
Right,
comma,
it's-
at the time of development permitting,
It's just
comma.
immediately connected.
Okay, anything else?
And just clarifying in both of those statements, we are striking the term improved and just leaving it simply as property. Correct?
Okay, all right with that? So, would someone like to make a motion that we approve this as revised? So that it can then move on to the council. We can, if we don't like the way it ended up, we can revisit it for the council, because the council's not going to act on it tonight. So, are you all happy with that? Would someone like? to
I'll
make that?
also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you and congratulations. And thank you, Alex and Susan and Scott. and Angie for writing it down in the minutes. So thank you. That's all the business we had on our agenda. I've got two other things to make you aware of. One of them, the council is going to consider and presumably approve tonight a direction to the Planning and Zoning Commission to solicit and appoint a comprehensive planning committee. The last committee was 8 people, and that has not passed yet, so we can't act on it. So, but that was, the last one was 8 people, 3 of whom were formal representatives of the MRA, the town council, and the college. And the others are at large. So we would be appointed, as I understand it, at large, and we would ask the mayor and the presidents of each of those organizations to appoint the other, if the council approves this. And we would then adopt that at our October meeting and go to the council. They've also directed Alex to issue an RFP for a consultant to work through that. The plan is for that to be essentially completed by May or June, so the council could act before the end of the fiscal year. So if we do that, that's going to be something that we're going to do. Alex is going to send out a request for people to submit their names and their qualifications with the usual form. That'll go out if the council approves that. We'll have to be doing that at our next month's meeting.
And who is the council appointing the at-large or?
We,
Okay.
at least they're asking us to. They may change their mind because they don't like who's on the list. And they'll be responsible for naming the consultant. And then finally, Wade was kind enough to offer to us the opportunity to go up and look at his marked off lot, which shows the differences related to stormwater, steep slope that we've been talking about, and we'll talk about going forward. He invited people to go up. It seems to me that if we can go ahead and set a time, we could then notice a time so the public can come to if they want. And Wade and I talked about a time, and I would like to propose that we set a time of 2 o'clock next Wednesday, which will be a week from yesterday. That would be the 15th, I believe. At his lot on the Foreman siding near the top of Gray Bridge. Is that the time that's okay with all y'all? Angie or Alex or Scott? Okay. By common consent?
Quick question, if we do that, and obviously several of us would probably be driving our own vehicles, how much parking and where do you recommend that we would gather?
There'll be room for it.
Okay,
And if you're not able to come then and check, or something comes up for you, you can still arrange separately for Wade to go up and see. But I wanted to make it a committee thing so that we can notice it. Okay,
next Wednesday.
next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Is there any other business to come before us?
The only thing is that at our next meeting, we'll be dealing with the stormwater stuff. And so you have received a year ago, 1 document, this year, a second document. Second document is a supplement to the first. And I would ask anybody to take a look at that in advance. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it because it is confusing as can be. I think it needs not to be confusing. That's the purpose of it.
Great.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I ask a question on our agenda today? We've got the stormwater for next, and then we also got the signage. Is there a chance we'll be discussing signage? I'm just trying to think
I
what
suspect
preparation
no.
I need
Yeah,
to.
I don't think we're going to get to signage. Stormwater's going to take good discussion.
Right. So just to clarify, I had put together a draft agenda for the October 14th meeting, noting a line item, so, essentially as time permits, if needed, discussion of signage. I can strike that, assuming and being in the assumption that stormwater will take the duration of the meeting. Yes. Okay.
Okay,
So yeah,
we're-
you could move that to November.
I could, yes, I will do that. And I will also make a note that I had 3 bullets under discussion of the stormwater ordinance, presentation and discussion planned by Wade Burns, P and Z member, overview of legal framework with Susan Taylor Rash, town attorney, follow up from discussion with Buncombe County and NCDEQ, Scott Adams. I basically, I've started taking a look through Mr. Burns' presentation materials, and I would like to propose that the time be allotted for his presentation, as I still need time to revise some of my findings in addition to checking in with the town attorney. So all that being said, if we're able to, or if I'm just able to revise the agenda to allot the time to Mr. Burns for those presentation materials, there will likely be some discussion coming out of the site visits that you all are discussing for next week. That's fine.
We also need to add on the continuing agenda, the committee that was appointed that Dan is chairing, we did that last week, to consider the rules, whatever you call it.
Rules of procedure.
Procedures of this, just as a, so we don't forget it.
Sure, just have it as a
And
standing
like to
item.
forget.
I won't let you forget.
Okay, is there any other business, any public comment? We do have 2 members of the public. Mary.
My name is Mary Standard, and I live at 118 Shenandoah Terrace. First of all, thank you for your very detailed attention to all of this. I'm deeply appreciative. It's a hard subject and hard to wrap yourself around it. Sort of, and I know if it's out of line, let me know, but could someone sort of explain in layman's terms what this all means? And I'll start off and correct me. Is it basically providing a mechanism for providing water to the ETJ, and that then allows city water to the ETJ, and then that allows septic tanks to be built, doing away with that conflict between the wells being built and the septic tanks being built? Is that the fundamental aim of this? Am I interpreting that
I
correctly?
think the water, it doesn't, the water system is implicit, but all we were trying to do was to remove the requirement for attaching to the city sewer system.
Okay, that's sort of
Not-
what,
in other words, permit septic tanks as permitted by law.
okay, so that's sort of what all this boils
Right.
down to. And then by providing through some mechanism access to city water in the ETJ.
I don't think we addressed that.
No, I think Bill's right. All our intention was to remove what we consider
Sorry, could you lean into the microphone,
prohibition
please?
of sewer that we weren't sure would hold up in court.
Okay, so they,
And we recognize, I believe it was Susan brought to our attention, there also is statutory prohibition to require absolutely connections to city water service. So we simply incorporated, while we were making the revisions, we put that statutory, which nobody can control,
right.
exception in the ordinance itself, so the ordinance complies with state law.
Okay, so bottom line of all of this, we're not necessarily extending city water to ETJ. We are not doing that.
That's a difference.
That's a different subject. And I really do appreciate all the attention to detail. I'm asking just for this layman's term. So we're not, so the fact that you have this minimum lot size and on platted lots, and also the fact that as was pointed out, adjacent landowners have different issues if they want to put, so you can still have wells up
Yeah.
there as long as they meet the public health requirements
That's correct.
of the county. That's still being the basic caveat.
And that's what the statute.
Gotcha. That's what I'm just trying to, so all of this wonderful work that you've been doing, that you can do that. And I do think, if memory serves correctly, some of this involves state statutes changing over the years. It used to be, even in perhaps at the time the initial ordinances were enacted, you could still do involuntary annexation like Asheville, and then that was stripped away.
That changed significantly in 2011 and 2012.
Correct. So just to give some history on all of that, of what could have been done by the town on an involuntary basis, was changed with the state legislature, just for historical records. And that involved a big difference in what the landowner could do in ETJ up there. So just wanted to, and also it would be helpful to me and perhaps to some of the other public, if before this was presented to council, that it be finalized and sent out in the packet,
We intend that.
to do that before it goes in any shape, and with a small explanation of all this going on.
If you'll recall, what we did was we eliminated the requirement in the zoning ordinance, all of them as dealt with septic. And so we discovered after that there were other provisions in other parts of the ordinance outside of the zoning code
Right.
that also had those prohibitions. So that's what this is about. It's trying to get consistent with what the council has already done with the zoning code compared to what the zoning is.
No, y'all have done great work. I'm just really appreciative. And it takes people who have been involved in this, a deep level of reading on all of this. It's interesting that I think Montreat is still one of the very few municipalities in the state of North Carolina that still has ETJ. Much of that was stripped away by action of General Assembly a number of years ago. It does make you wonder if all this could be simplified if we, I say this somewhat in jest, if we just did away with voluntarily with the ETJ, then we wouldn't have to deal with all, and just leave it up to the county to take care of all of those things. And so, again, I appreciate what you've done, and I really do. Thank you.
Mary, you asked about water. The town has a water system serving 2/3 of the ETJ in this area. I say serving in that the water line goes past 2/3 of the lots. The question that is for the town to decide, and not the planning and zoning, is whether or not people in the ETJ can even buy the water that is passing by their lots, or pay for an extension to get to the water that's there and buy water there. And the town has received some inquiries, including one from the Theodosia, Reverend Billy Wade and his family, no kin to me, that a water line crosses their property. They've requested answers whether or not they can buy water from the town's water that was crossing their property, and that has not yet been answered. So that is a matter for the council to decide. And I know that Alan and I both have an interest in that answer too.
Yes, and that's part of what I was getting at. So I'm very thankful for your bringing that up. And I'm a little surprised that that would not come back to planning and zoning for a recommendation. I mean, but instead going directly to council, just the way things have been working, that would be, I mean, it's certainly, I would think, legal for council to, because council is in charge of the
Because it's
government.
money. So the town council, because it costs money, so the town council has to make that decision.
I would hope that they would refer it to planning and zoning for some sort of input, since y'all have dealt with these issues. along the way. But I do appreciate your bringing that up, and that was sort of getting to the point that I was making. And I would also assume that this applies to all the ETJ at the end of Mississippi as well along the way, since otherwise it would be spot zoning. So I think just to keep it in the wider context, as we look at the weeds, that we also see the big picture up here as well. And again, thank you, Scott, for your input, and to the rest of the staff, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else? Is there then any other business?
Second. Before you vote on it, Wade and Mason, could y'all hang around for a second afterwards so we can put our heads together on the rules and procedures committee real quick?
Sure. That's not official action.
No. Well, we will, we'll have a meeting, but
Okay. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. All opposed? Thank you. Thank you for this.